Dorothy Dandridge accomplished many things in her short life. She was the first Black woman nominated for the Best Actress Academy Award and the first Black woman on the cover of Life magazine. But she was also haunted. In her perspective, often humorous autobiography, Everything and Nothing, The Dorothy Dandridge Tragedy, she said, "If it is possible for a human being to be like a haunted house," she writes, "maybe that would be me." Although Dorothy Dandridge may have felt she lived her life being chased by ghosts, she was more than a tormented, tragic figure. She was a trailblazer and America's first bona fide Black movie star. Dorothy Jean Dandridge was born on November 9, 1922, in Cleveland, Ohio. She was a child of Hollywood, growing up with her older sister Vivian in a heady showbiz environment. Her mother, actress-comedian Ruby Dandridge, left her husband while she was still pregnant, and as such, Dorothy never knew her father. Before her successful acting career, Ruby worked as a cook, performing the poems of Paul Laurence Dunbar in churches on the weekends. As a toddler, the adorable Dorothy made a splash performing the poem in the morning for her weary mother one night, and Ruby saw a way out. "You ain't gonna work in Mr. Charlie's kitchen like me," she told her daughter. "We're gonna fix it so you be something else other than that." Ruby was aided in her quest to make her daughter a star by her partner Eloise Matthews, aka Auntie Mama, a severe piano teacher who physically and mentally abused Dorothy. Dorothy had what she called a crying childhood. While Ruby wrote skits at the kitchen table, Auntie Mama taught Dorothy and her sister Vivian to sing and act like prim and proper ladies. Pushed into show business at a young age by her mother, Dorothy performed with her sister Vivian as a song and dance team called the Wonder Children. Ruby arranged with the National Baptist Convention for Vivian and Dorothy to perform at churches in a different state each month. This contract was the family's ticket out of poverty. "A little like having a deal with the MGM for white folks," Dorothy said. The whole family, including the hated Auntie Mama, went on a road. On stage, Ruby did acrobatics. The girls dressed as boy urchins and told wholesome jokes that mysteriously made the adults laugh. Living on a road was hard and cramped, especially in a hot, racist South. "So many towns, cities, halls, churches, and I really saw little," Dorothy said. "For all those years, we slept mostly 4 a bed. My mother and Auntie Mama slept at the length of the bed, and Vivian and I were at their feet. I remember feet pushing up against me night after night when we rode the train." But there were bright spots like the gig in Hawaii that introduced Dorothy to the wonders of volcanoes, hula, and puppy love with a local boy. Around 1930, the Dandridge family moved to sunny Los Angeles, California. Later, Ruby would find her own success appearing in such films as Tish, Cabin in the Sky, My Wild Irish Rose, and was a regular on such radio programs as The Judy Canova Show and Beulah. By 1937, Dorothy and Vivian were performing with Etta Jones as the Dandridge Sisters. The group landed gigs at the famous Cotton Club in Harlem and performed with top acts such as the Jimmy Lunsford Orchestra and Cab Calloway. That's where Dorothy met the man who would become her first husband, Harold Nicholas. As an African-American singer, Dandridge confronted early on the segregation and racism of the entertainment industry. She may have been allowed on stage, but in some venues, she couldn't eat in a restaurant or use certain facilities because of the color of her skin. As a teenager, Dorothy began earning small roles in a number of films. She and her sister appeared in the Marx Brothers classic, A Day at the Races, in 1937, as well as Going Places in 1938 with Louis Armstrong. On her own, she danced with Harold Nicholas of the famous tap dancing duo, the Nicholas Brothers, in the 1941 musical Sun Valley Serenade. The duo's tap dancing routine was cut from the version of the film shown in the South. By the 1940s, when Vivian, the aggressive outgoing sister, who everyone assumed would become a big star, decided to do a solo act, Dorothy, the shy and timid sister, settled into married life. She married Harold Nicholas in 1942, but their union proved to be anything but a happy one. Harold reportedly liked to chase other women, and Dorothy virtually retired from performing during this time. Adding to the strain, after Dorothy gave birth to their daughter, Harold Suzanne Lynn Nicholas in 1943, they discovered the girl had brain damage. Lynn was severely intellectually disabled, a condition Dorothy blamed on her delayed birth. Harold had gone golfing and left her without a car, so she stalled. Seeking to find a cure, Dorothy had Lynn receive expensive private care for many years. Due to the brutal medical norms of the times, Dorothy was eventually convinced by doctors to give Lynn to a caretaker. On the outside, I said to myself, I've had it. I'll have to give her up. Inside, I never gave her up. It was myself that I began giving up, she said. Dorothy divorced Harold not long after the birth of their daughter. During this period of great personal depression, Dorothy, feeling she had failed as a daughter, as a wife, as a mother, as a lover, was finally determined to prove she could do something right. She set out to capture the American dream and become a star. The idea that a black woman could become a dramatic film actress was still unthought of. Dorothy was also extremely shy and introverted, but an extraordinary drive took over, and she pushed herself even beyond her own limits, channeling all her energies and frustrations into her career. She exercised daily. Whatever money she made from early singing engagements was poured into costumes. She worked hard on her voice, knowing that if she perfected her style, she would have a foot in the big showbiz door. When she was not in rehearsal hall, she was studying singing, acting, dancing, or she was meeting people off to a benefit, party, interview, or audition. My sister worked 24 hours a day at being a star, Vivian once said, and it paid off. In the late 1940s, Dorothy worked with black composer-arranger Phil Moore, who had been the singing coach for Lena Horne, and who later worked with Diane Carroll and Julie Wilson. Moore played an important part in shaping their styles. Horne, Dandridge, and Carroll had striking similarities in dress, hairstyles, and delivery. Phil Moore carefully groomed these women, helping them smooth away the rough edges. He knew exactly what type of material they should use in order to appeal to white audiences. Not one of them sang rhythm and blues. They stuck to the acceptable sounds of Gershwin, Rodgers, and Hart. By 1951, Dorothy appeared at the Mocambo with Desi Arnaz's band. The breakthrough performance, however, was at Los Angeles Club Gala, a hangout for showbiz folks. Dorothy started off disastrously, so nervous according to her manager Earl Mills that she could not stand and had to be seated on stage while she feebly performed. But Phil Moore, by then so enamored by her, joked and talked with her on stage. After her problems opening night, Moore worked with her long hours every day before she made an appearance. He loosened her up and coaxed her out of her shell, touching on the fiery personality she became famous for. By then, Moore and Dorothy had become lovers. In a short period of time, her act at Club Gala was so talked about that Dorothy was booked back into the Mocambo and broke all existing attendance records. The press promptly latched onto her, as it did with no other black beauty. When she reopened at the Mocambo, Life magazine ran a splashy picture layout touting her as the most beautiful Negro singer since Lena Horne. 2 years later, Life ran another Dandridge photo layout, and the following year she became one of the first black women to ever grace Life cover, and she also appeared on the cover of Ebony magazine. Soon, Dorothy made major appearances at important nightclubs around the country. When she performed at New York's La Vie en Rose, then a popular nightery in the midst of serious financial problems, her 2-week engagement was such a sellout that she stayed on for some 14 weeks and single-handedly saved the club from bankruptcy. She was the first black performer to appear at the Waldorf Astoria's prestigious Empire Room. As Dandridge was ushered in, Lena Horne was eased out. What Lena thought of her rival is anyone's guess, but surely there has to be an occasion when, eyeing Dorothy's triumphs, Lena felt her own day had come and gone, especially when Dorothy won movie roles in The Bright Road, her first starring film, Tarzan's Peril, and The Harlem Globetrotters. Like Marilyn Monroe, her fellow student at the Method-Based Actors Laboratory, Dorothy was a devotee of psychoanalysis, crediting her doctors with frequently saving her life. In 1952, while singing in a show with Desi Arnaz at the La Vie en Rose, she met a man just as interested in Freudian theories as she. According to Dorothy, Harry Belafonte and I had the same press agent, a woman. Harry was at the Village Vanguard, and the agent said to me, "There's only one person I know who is more beautiful than you. It's a man, and he's in New York now." The agent told Harry the same thing. "There's only one person more beautiful than he, and it's a woman, and she's in New York now." Dandridge went to the Village Vanguard to see Belafonte. "I went backstage, and when I saw him, I said, 'Oh my goodness, he's just as beautiful.' He simply said, 'Dorothy.'" The two beauties began a passionate affair and found they had much in common, including their interest in psychotherapy. Therapy helped alleviate the pain and mental turmoil caused by their status as famous Black entertainers. According to Dandridge, if you find yourself suddenly projected into a Caucasian orbit, you have an inner experience that's hard on the nerves. You must be at your best with each instant, for you are carrying the Negro race. Negroes everywhere will recognize what I'm talking about, but unless they have been thrown into the experience of having daily to deal with large numbers of Caucasians, they won't be able to grasp what this experience can do to your neurological and psychological system. The romance, however, didn't last. Harry was searching for someone with whom he could comfortably, clearly be the dominant figure, Dorothy lamented. But they would remain friends and star together in the films Bright Road, Carmen Jones, and Island in the Sun. Excited about the prospect of potentially playing the career-making lead in the film Carmen Jones, Dorothy secured a meeting in 1954 with legendary Austrian-born director Otto Preminger. Upon entering Preminger's office, Dorothy encountered a type she knew well. "Otto was ugly," she said. "Many of those little men who run Hollywood are ugly. It is the folklore of Hollywood. The ugliness is much commented upon. It is known and understood that out of their ugliness, they fashion an armor of toughness with which to prey and rule and succeed, and these alone are the kings of Hollywood." Preminger was equally nonplussed by Dorothy, telling her she was all wrong for the role of Carmen, a hard-living sex worker. She was too lovely and sophisticated, a model, a beautiful butterfly. Dorothy was unimpressed with his unimaginativeness, retorting, "I am an actress." She began to embark on a campaign to prove Preminger wrong. I hurried to Max Factor's studio and began to look around for the right garb. I would return looking like Carmen herself. I found an old wig which I was told Cornell Wilde wore in one of his pictures, she said. I put on heavy lipstick, work pit curls around my face. I made myself look like a hussy, and Dorothy got the part. Dorothy became completely obsessed with Preminger. He took over on me exactly as he would one of his moving picture productions. I was a production too. My dress, my life, my friends, who I saw, where I went, my perfume, my manner, my career, I did as Otto advised. He put champagne into my life. Always the best, only the best. That was his motto. Drink the richest and the best, never settle for anything less. For a time, it seemed Preminger's advice was working. Dorothy was a sensation in Carmen Jones, but she came to view the 4 years she spent with the controlling and married Preminger as time lost. He advised her not to take supporting roles, including the one in The King and I that would be played instead by Rita Moreno. He told her instead to focus on nightclub singing. No one thought an all-black movie would do well at the box office. The lavish Technicolor CinemaScope modernization of Bizet's opera Carmen was a surprise hit of 1954. Dorothy's rousing performance as Carmen was notable. That same year, she became the first black actress to win an Academy Award nomination as Best Actress. Everywhere she went, everything she said or did was of public interest. A host of publications publicized and fawned over her with a constant whirl of attention and adulation. Newspapers ran photographs of her arriving at airports or strolling along Fifth Avenue. Formally invited by the French government to the Cannes Film Festival, where Carmen Jones had a special screening, she arrived in France triumphantly aglow amid a horde of international photographers and reporters. The following year, she was invited to England for a celebration at Oxford, in an elaborate ceremony that lasted until dawn. Thousands of students crowned her the Queen of May. For Black America, then about to launch its massive civil rights movement, Dorothy Dandridge was part of a new day. Athletes like Jackie Robinson and Roy Campanella had integrated Major League Baseball. Now a dramatic Black actress integrated American motion pictures. But sadly, her decline came soon after her triumph. She realized she was but a token figure within a movie colony. There was no great follow-up roles to sustain her fame. 3 years were passed before she appeared in another film. She co-starred in Island in the Sun with Harry Belafonte and James Mason. Island in the Sun, like her other films, Tamango and The Decks Ran Red, she was the first Black woman to find herself in the arms of white men. But the films, provocative for the time, always pulled back at critical times. Her manager, Earl, said that producers and studios could never decide what nationality she should be. Dialogue was repeatedly changed, softened, so were love scenes or any talk of romance. It was a frustrating, debilitating experience that broke her. By 1959, she appeared in Preminger's infamous Porgy and Bess, co-starring Sidney Poitier. She knew if it were a hit, she might have to wait 5 more years for another decent role. Her relationship with Preminger was now over, and he was verbally abusing her in ways he usually meted out to lesser actors. I realized we were in a game, I to get him, he to lose me. I had bitter nights of weeping. No one will ever know how I wept, Dorothy said of their relationship. She returned to nightclub work but hated it. The clubs made her feel like a failure, a dramatic actress unable to get dramatic parts. Off-screen, her life was in shambles too. Ugly stories circulated that she was no longer attracted to Black men and now suffering from what Blacks called white fever. She was romantically linked to Preminger, Michael Rennie, and Kurt Jurgens. No doubt this kind of talk was the cruelest blow of all. Dorothy Dandridge's involvement with white men grew in large part out of her peculiar position as a love goddess in a system Black men never got anywhere near. Her sister Vivian has said that Dorothy would have gladly married someone like Harry Belafonte, but few important Black male stars of her day were already married. At the same time, the Black female star, like any other star, Black or white, male or female, often needs someone willing to take the back seat, permitting the star to glow in the light of fame. Those Black males Dorothy did encounter seldom understood the world in which she operated. By the 1960s, Dorothy was breaking down. I was moving around in a neurotic haze, having spasms before and after singing, sneaking in drinks, taking pills to dehydrate myself, she said. Isolated, desperate, older, and aware that if her career didn't go right, at least her private life should. Dorothy then made a terrible mistake. She married white restaurateur Jack Dennison. For years, she had been thrifty, terrified of poverty, carefully saving every penny. But once her mania had taken over, once the equilibrium had been thrown off, talk spread that she was pouring her money into Dennison's new restaurant. The marriage was disastrous, filled with drinking and intense fights. Dennison was abusive and mishandled her money. With Dandridge losing so much of her savings to an investment in her husband's failed restaurant, she had to sell her house and everything of value she owned. Then her husband left her. Their marriage came to an end in 1962. Dorothy's financial situation grew increasingly worse. With creditors and the IRS closing in, she was forced to file for bankruptcy. By 1963, she could no longer afford to pay for her daughter's 24-hour medical care, and Lynn was placed in a state institution. Dorothy soon suffered a nervous breakdown. She tried to climb out of her financial hole by working constantly in nightclubs, but it was never enough. She was further heartbroken when many of her friends told her not to write her autobiography, that her story was not a credit to her race. By 1965, she was tired, bewildered, and overwhelmed by heartache. According to her manager, Earl Mills, she drank heavily during this time and her health was poor. Mills said that a new physician had given her drug prescriptions to cover a multitude of ills. Briefly, she attempted to resurrect her career. With Mills, she made a trip to Mexico, worked out at a health farm, and optimistically signed a new movie contract. But a few days later, after her return to Hollywood, September 8, 1965, Dorothy was found dead in her Hollywood home at age 42. Initially, her death was reported to be the result of an embolism. Additional findings pointed to an overdose of an antidepressant. Dorothy had little more than $2 in her bank account at the time of her death. Dorothy Dandridge's unique and tragic story became the subject of renewed interest in the late 1990s, beginning in 1997 with the release of a biography, Dorothy Dandridge by Donald Bogle, and a 2-week retrospective at New York City's Film Forum. In 2000, film star Halle Berry won Golden Globe and Emmy Awards for her portrayal of the groundbreaking actress in the acclaimed TV movie introducing Dorothy Dandridge. Harry Belafonte once said of his former co-star, "She was the right person, in the right place, at the wrong time." There's no doubt if Dorothy Dandridge was given a space and opportunity to fully express her talents, she would have been a massive star. Although the climate of Hollywood at the time and racism attempted to extinguish her light, Dorothy managed to break through in films and on stage. Her striking beauty and talent left an unforgettable mark on the entertainment world. Her hardships and suffering were not in vain, for she opened a door for many Black dramatic actresses to walk through. Her life may be seen as a tragedy, but her legacy as a forerunner makes her triumphant. Dorothy Dandridge, Onyx Queen.
You do something to me, something that simply mystifies me. Tell me, why should it be? You've got the power to hypnotize me. Let me live 'neath your spell. You do that voodoo that you do so well. You do something to me that nobody else can do. You do something to me, something that simply mystifies me. Tell me, why should it be? You've got the power to hypnotize me. Let me live 'neath your spell. Do that, voodoo that you do so well. Oh, you do something to me that nobody else can do.
If you enjoyed this video, please share, like, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching.